Hello, Technology Show viewers. Your producer forgot to click the record button on the video edition of today's podcast, so you missed a little bit. My apologies for that, but it picks up about 5-6 minutes into this week's show. If you'd like to hear what happened in that first part, you can listen to it in the audio version. Again, my apologies. Thanks for watching.
Again and again, it's entitlement gone violent. Not simply having an open hand and an expectation, but now it's this sense that if we can take it, might makes right.
I think yesterday, Ann Coulter, and some people love her, some people hate her. I just read the story. She had a new book released yesterday called Demonic. Yeah. And it talks about the mob mentality and how if you trace that back, even as far back as the French Revolution, the mob mentality tends to come from the liberal side of politics. And let me just add one thing about James Carville. I disagree with him so much on politics, but if he's on TV, I stop and watch. Love to hear his voice. And then there's a lot of issues that he just shows a lot of common sense. And I think he's absolutely right here on. I think he's right. I mean, I think it's proven across the country that people are kind of getting fed up that nothing is changing and things are getting worse, and obviously they're not responding in a constructive way. And I tell you, there's a leadership vacuum in our country for somebody to step up and to give voice and to give direction and to show that proper way that, okay, this is how we're going to deal with this. The funny thing, well, it's not funny, but the sad thing is you got people on both sides. You got, the Tea Party's upset. They're doing protests. You got these from the liberal mindset. They're upset. They're doing stuff. And we're all upset. Why can't we get on the same page and make some changes happen,
Well, these are indications that our society, the fabric of our society, is pulling apart, not pulling together. We don't any longer have a cohesive standard or a cohesive set of core beliefs around which we rally. And we're in many, I know the comparison's almost overused, but we're in many instances comparable to Rome when she began to get to the death throes of the empire.
Yes. Yeah.
Steve, two questions for you. Number one, now I was just a kid in the early 70s, so do you have any recollection, did we see any of this kind of stuff going on in the early 70s?
60s and 70s. 60s and 70s. There were summers. I think one of them was called the Summer of Discontent, was one phrase that was used, and cities burned from coast to coast. Okay. Riots broke out. Some of that was predicated on social injustice. That is, before the magistrates and judges and the civil authorities, there was real, ingrained, and perpetrated injustice, systematic, against classes and races of people. And you're going to have violence. I mean, we would probably be surprised at what we'd be willing to do if our children had no opportunity and no hope and no future, and we saw them instead turning to drugs and other things. And as I said to my daughter Alicia this last week, don't always assume that governments are good. Our founding fathers knew that governments were not always good. That's why they put the Second Amendment in there, that the right of the people to bear arms shall not be infringed. And they knew that if government has all the power, that then the government at some point is going to begin to use that power for its own interests against the interests of the citizens. And free men don't forget that. People who wish to be free remember that we have an obligation to say to government, you're not God. You too must bow to a supreme law, and that supreme law recognizes individual rights, individual responsibilities. The more the government intrudes into doing for us, the further it erodes our freedoms. You cannot have it either or. Both things will always coexist. They have done so from the beginning of recorded history. So I would just simply say that.
Okay, so are these mobs, are they doing a good thing or a bad thing, Steve? Are they reacting against the government? Is the government being evil here?
This is not that kind of, they're not reacting against injustice at this point. This is purely, I can take what you have and nobody can stop me. It's thuggery and it's a brutal law.
Is there any sense that these things are being coordinated through some kind of social networking, or is this just random?
No, this is the product of 40 years of the kind of education we've been giving our children. We have told them, first of all, that they're the product of time plus chance, no God, no purpose, no divine accountability. You're just animals. We've taught them that through their music, through the movies, through the culture, the classroom, and now many churches, uncertain of their place and uncertain of the Word of God, are resulting in this kind of foggy thinking and foggy preaching where we never address head-on the crucial issues of our time and the crucial issues of human existence, that you were the creation of God. You are on a mission from Him. He has things He would like for you to do. Maybe there's not a checklist for you, but there's a general direction towards which He wants you to help move this world. And at the end of life, it is appointed unto men once to die, but after death, the judgment. Hebrews 9:27. If that concept doesn't imbue and saturate our thinking and guide us as human beings, we become animals. Tell a man he's an animal, he'll soon act like it. And that's what we're seeing now. And I really don't know. If you were to go into an area like this and begin preaching the gospel, we have, oh my goodness, we have gotten ourselves off in a corner by ourselves, learned our own special little code, and I'm as guilty as anyone on this. I think about this all the time when I'm driving the streets, when I'm talking to people in Greenville here. Lord, help me. Give me an Acts 2 experience where I can communicate these timeless truths in a way that connects with them. Never backing away from the truth, but speaking their language.
TG, we had a conversation 2-3 weeks ago here, just in studio before the show, and I know you were expressing frustration over some of the mixed messages we send in the culture, and I think that this had to do with, now this is off the cuff here, but I think it was
Rihanna.
Yeah, and just, I mean, mention that because I thought I wasn't even aware of it, but I thought you made a great point that day.
You heard about her new song.
That's what I want. That's what TG was telling me.
I don't know. We may be on the same page. You may be talking about a different one, but the story is as follows. Last summer, she filed a police report. Yeah, a charge against Chris Brown, claiming abuse, physical abuse, and all of that, and that was very public, very big time in the public eye. Then this summer, I had the radio on, and on came a song from Rihanna about, I believe it's titled S&M.
Yes.
Is the title of the song.
Yes.
And what some of the lyrics are, sticks and stones may break my bones, but chains and whips excite me. And, I mean, it's hard to do research on this topic because you don't want to get too you never know what you may find. But what we're talking about here is bondage and abuse as a part of something that develops a sexual excitement. So my thing about being two-faced in this is that you can't file a complaint against this guy saying he was physically abusive to me and then sing a song talking about the awesomeness of physical abuse as a good thing and do it it aggravates me. Please.
Her new song is called Man Down, and the video features her shooting a man and killing a man who is physically abusive to her. It's
yeah,
just not
yeah.
the height
I
of-
did. I heard
the
about
height
that. And
of
I haven't seen that
hypocrisy.
yet, but I did hear about that. So a guy that, a guy that did something or is trying to attack her, she shoots him and kills him, and then I guess these songs will be on the same album. So I hope they're back to back. I hope it's just like I hope somehow it's like, okay, if you do something to me, I'm going to shoot you. By the way, do something to me because I like it and it makes me excited.
Well, and this is the society we live in. We are the society of second, third, fourth, fifth chances. And obviously we all believe in that. And you had the scandal with Chris Brown and Rihanna, and they have both gone on, and Rihanna's career has gone to a whole nother level. And Chris Brown is, trying to make a comeback and has done so. And it's almost like, hey, that never happened.
Yeah, well, I just want to tie all this together with a thread and go back to what you said, Steve, and that is through the culture we have been speaking things that have been detrimental. And you guys know I have said over and over again that while we don't see ourselves, the common person doesn't see themselves as a philosopher, my opinion is that the music and the entertainment of the day is where philosophy of life is expressed. And so, I mean, TG, when you brought this up to me 3-4 weeks ago, I thought you were dead on. You cannot call the police and say, I want this person, I want the law to take care of this person because this behavior is not right, and then promote the same behavior on your new album.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
it's almost
but this is where we are. If anyone listening to this show has the opportunity, has access to Francis Schaeffer's series, he had 2 series. I was just speaking about them with someone yesterday. Whatever Happened to the Human Race is it's dated. But if you saw the things that he predicted were coming and then picked up the newspaper today, when he predicted them, I heard all kinds of people bust right out laughing in a movie theater where it was being shown. Bust right out laughing. What an alarmist he is. One of the things was that governments would begin to put chemicals in the water to control the mood of the population. And then I just read this last week, where New York City was thinking of doing that if it got too hot and problematic this summer, that they were thinking about putting things into they were considering this as an option. And the man was a true prophet. The other one, the other video series was How Should We Then Live? And that is his premiere. If you've never sat down and seen that series, watched it all the way through, you must commit to find it and get it and watch it. It's $59 for the DVD set now, and I know it was shot in the 70s, but it is as current today as when he first did it. He traces the foundations of those countries that came out of the Reformation, whose worldview was shaped by the Word of God, and those who came out of the Renaissance, whose worldview was shaped by humanism, a humanism that's not Christian, a humanism that's not humanitarianism, but a humanism that says whatever the individual wants, no consideration of God, no consideration of others. And then that devolves into governments that think that way towards their citizens, and you get this brutal, thuggish kind of law. He shows how our law was negative law. That is, we told people, you cannot do this. Their law was a positive law, and that sounds like, well, everybody wants to be positive. But what it said was, you'll take care of the environment. Well, now let me show you how that changes. In the 60s and 70s, in the 70s for sure, I was putting down chlordane around houses to kill termites. Today, if I were to do that, they would take me away and prosecute me. And when you tell people you can't do this, that means everything else that's not proscribed, not forbidden, is acceptable to them. You can do this. You have great freedom and great latitude. But when you give these nebulous, fuzzy kind of goals towards which you're going to move, things change. And that's why you got in the French Revolution, people, their government was just in constant turmoil because the law as it was applied and understood yesterday was the same law, but it was now understood in a different way and applied in a different way.
Well, Steve, and we get back to this, you've heard me say this before, this sense of ought. So there are all kinds of things that I can do, but there has to be this governor on me that asks the question, ought I to do it?
Well, that's why the Founding Fathers said it is impossible to govern without God and the Bible.
Yeah.
You have to have that concept. Even those that were deists understood that unless people had this principle within, if they would not self-govern, then they must be governed external from the outside. That is, force must be applied to make them obey. Yeah. But if they were internally self-governed, then they could have great freedoms.
Yeah, well, this has been good and good fodder for thought. Let's move on here. So our next story is entitled, "This Guy Has My Computer."
We mentioned this. This came up in conversation, I think, in our last show, didn't it?
Yeah, I mean,
Yep.
in passing it did, and I didn't know what you were talking about, Matthew, so obviously, I've gotten caught up on this story.
I don't know what link you linked us to. I may find a different one because this domain is blocked.
Right. The
Oh, really?
I found
Yes.
the guy's Tumblr
I have
site,
it up
and
here.
the Tumblr site is just like, "This guy has my
Yes.
Mac.tumblr" or
Yeah.
something. And I think we saw it after the show. It popped up on my top links or whatever. And basically, the guy's MacBook got stolen. He had a program on there called Hidden, and actually took pictures of the guy using his computer. There were pictures of the guy driving the car, and it monitors everything. He had screenshots of the guy deleting his Apple account and logging into his Google. He went to the police. They're like, whatever. So then the guy is interviewed on ABC News, and the police get wind of it. They call him back like, "Hey, yes, we'd like to find out what's going on with your..." And they catch the guy because he worked for either a limo or a cab company. So that's how they were able to track him down. They find him, and he had actually not stolen the computer. He had bought the computer off the street. So don't buy Macs out of people's trunks.
Rats. That's where TG and I get all our Apple.
But I mean, they're just on the official website. The guy's main site is just the guy's just kind of sitting there on the couch looking at the computer, not close to the computer. And then there's one where he's in the bed using. It's just very strange, very strange. But
okay, well, and here's the thing: we don't have an official download of the week, so you're not going to get to hear our great, sound effect there. But
Hold on. This one?
yeah, what?
This one?
Download of the week.
That sound effect? You mean people don't get to hear that
That's
this
what
week?
I'm talking about. But we just will reiterate a download that we have pumped before, and that's pray.org.
Yeah, which is
PREY.
essentially the same thing as Hidden, which this guy used on his Mac, but it is a free software, open source. You can I think you can have up to 3 devices on an account, something like that. But the same deal. If you had a device that was stolen, you can use Wi-Fi tracking. You can monitor it. You can totally shut it down. Because there is the potential if if it is a smart thief. If you acted quick enough and you knew these kinds of things could be on there, you could steal a laptop, totally wipe it out, boot it back up from the ground and be fine, and you wouldn't have this stuff. But if you act quickly, if you knew it was stolen and you acted quickly, you can lock down the computer to where you can't do anything without a password. Like, it totally shuts it down.
But most smart thieves wouldn't steal laptops. They're in Washington.
Taking pictures
sorry.
of their
what? And if you are interested, Hidden is not free. It's $15 a year for 1 computer, $45 a year for 5 computers. So I'm saying the Techology crew, we should all go in and we can protect our 5. Not yours, Steve. We don't care if anybody steals yours.
Hey, listen, I got a better idea. Because we passed this cost-saving tip along to our viewers, they could all afford to send us $5.
I've got my laptop on pray.org, and
Yeah,
I mean,
my
it's,
laptop, my MacBook, anything like that.
I've got all my stuff on it. Yep.
Yeah.
Do you? That's good. I've tested it out before too. Let's see now. Pray.org isn't loading for me, so I'm trying to.
See, slide out here and slide out.
Exactly. Prayproject.com. Prayproject.com, not pray.org.
Sorry.
That's all right. Just wanted to get everybody there right. But it's the other great thing about it is it's cross-platform, so it's Windows, Linux, Ubuntu, Android.
Yep.
It's beautiful.
Gesundheit.
Yes.
Hey, speaking of Ubuntu,
Yes.
now that's something that you could have made your download of the week. That new version, I really like it.
Do you really?
Oh man, I think it's the best one ever. And
You
that's spoken
surprised
as
me, man.
No. It's easier for me to get around in and figure out what to do. The other earlier editions of it, I just sit there like a gorilla looking at the cage. You know, I mean, I had no idea what to do, but this is so intuitive. It's really, I hate to say it because then there'd be a lawsuit and I have to change it. It's a lot like the Windows environment.
What? It's a lot like the Windows environment?
Yeah.
Yeah. I would liken it to another environment myself, but
well, that's what I mean. It's probably managed to get the best of both worlds and put it out there. But anyhow, I like it, and that's my endorsement.
Once developers have an incentive to develop for that platform and make money and build good software, you know that, and it's like, I mean, that's where I feel like Ubuntu will take off, and the platform's there. That's the thing. Ubuntu is, as far as Linux distributions go, the best in anything that I've seen, and the simplest.
Well, I had given up on it. You know, I continued to use 10.4 because that's what I've got on my desk, my laptop over on the desk in my office. But then Tony turned me on to this other one, and man, I really like it. I couldn't believe the difference.
Hey, let me say, before we get to They Said It, just a couple more things about this Mac story, this stolen MacBook. Two things a little disheartening about this story. Number one, that this guy goes to law enforcement, shows pictures of this gentleman who has his computer. It says, this is the house the guy lives in. And the police department in Oakland didn't act on it at all, and it was because of Becky Worley, who's a tech person, works for ABC, caught wind of this just on the internet. And so, as Heath already noted, when she and ABC began to look into it, well, then the police were right on it. The second thing that's disturbing about this is Molly Wood, who also, she's a tech person at CBS. She also lives in Oakland. Her apartment was broke into. She said they wiped out her gadgets. And what and she says this, I know where they are. They're down at the local flea market. And what law enforcement told her to do, they came over, and it took them 2 or 3 days to respond. So her house is broken into, her gadgets are gone. They don't even come the day that it happens. And what the police department says to her is just file it on your insurance. And so I mean, it's kind of just a disheartening part of this story as far as law enforcement. And I'm not saying that doesn't speak for law enforcement everywhere, but at least in Oakland, California, I mean, it's just, you know, it's pathetic.
Well,
we've been told the same thing here when we've been broken into at the church, and they smashed doors and did a lot. You know, they came in because I insisted that they dust, but I never heard anything back, and they told me when they left, they said, really, the best thing to do is just file this with your insurance.
The excuse that they gave this guy is we get so many theft reports, we can't investigate them all. We get thousands every year.
What's that say about our society? I
Okay,
wonder if you could do a survey and really assess how much theft adds to the cost of the items that we do every day. I wonder if a lot of the economic trouble we're in today is not directly related to our morality.
Now, Steve, that would open up a gateway for a libertarian rant on if law enforcement wasn't tied up so much with the war on drugs, they could. But I'm not going to go that way.
I won't. I am not a libertarian who favors drug use. I'm sorry. That's the one point of departure, because I see so often how that drug use affects everybody else. It's not something that you do by yourself. It affects the whole culture.
But if the government would legalize drugs and regulate it, they'd put them out of business and go and bankrupt the system.
Well, we'll have that debate sometime.
Yeah, well, yeah, Heath, we could talk methadone here, but we don't have time. Maybe one day we will. So I think the whole methadone treatment in the United States busts that theory right out of the water.
They said the same thing about state liquor stores in Ohio and so forth, other states, that if the state controls it, then they'll be able to control alcoholism and limit who. And that was such a joke from the beginning. And what it did now is like the lotto, which again preys on human weakness. The state's in the business of promoting it.
All right, let's move on to They Said It.
Yes.
Yes, TG.
Read my lips.
I'm going to say this again.
I've never taken steroids or HGH.
I took the initiative in creating the internet.
The Macintosh, of all the machines I've ever seen, is the only one that meets that standard.
I'm not a crook.
If you know what you're doing here, slide out.
Most people who profess a deep love of the Bible have never actually read the book. They have memorized parts of text that they can string together to prove the biblical basis for whatever it is they believe in, but they ignore the vast majority of the text. Rabbi Rami Shapiro, Bible professor at Middle Tennessee State University, source CNN.
After meeting with university officials, we agreed that it is in the best interest of Ohio State that I resign as head football coach. The appreciation that Ellen and I have for the Buckeye Nation is immeasurable. Jim Tressel in a press conference resigning as the Ohio State University's football coach. Source, ESPN.
We can block a number of sites at will. Most of the websites that are blocked have to do with obscene material that's inappropriate. It just so happened that week the News in Advance was blocked for a day or two. We're a private organization, and we don't have to give a reason, and we won't. Jerry Falwell, Jr., Chancellor of Liberty University, making a statement about Liberty's blocking of the News in Advance from their campus-wide network. Source, the News in Advance.
OS X is no longer the security blanket of the computing world. If a strange pop-up appears on your machine, no matter how safe you think OS X is, don't click on it. There will be a successor to the Mac Defender. That piece of malware will have its own successor. It's a battle that won't stop. Megan LeVay Heaton, reporting on Mac Defender and the state of malware on Apple computers. Source, the unofficial Apple blog.
Okay, this story, that the first one you read, Steve, when you go to that website there, that professor, the rabbi, said that there are times when he'll say in a lecture, he talks about the book of second hesitations.
Yeah. And then, this was a great. It listed a lot of quotes that people, think are attributed to the Bible, and I really think the one that I get thrown at me a lot is in the Bible, but a lot of times, like if people are doing something they know they weren't supposed to do, and they're like, well, the Bible says not to judge. Yeah. I had a couple one time we were trying to help out, and they were living together, and neither one of them their divorce had gone through, and they'd gotten pregnant. And they're like, yeah, we're going to this other church. They judge us. The Bible says not to judge. And I wanted to say, the Bible says also not to sleep with anybody that's not your wife. Have you been interested in reading that part of the Bible? So, but I didn't. Those are the kind of things 10 minutes after the conversation, and I wouldn't have been able to say it with the grace and love that I should have. But
listen, I had a person one time that was trying to get me to understand that that godliness is next to cleanliness was in the Bible.
Yeah.
And this is a person that had been in church their whole life. They were in their 40s.
You mean it's not?
Yeah. And I remember looking at them saying, no, that's not in the Bible. Oh, yeah, are you sure? Are you sure? Yeah, I'm sure on that one.
I'm telling you, it's I don't know what it is, but it's this, the Lord helps those that help themselves, and so many things that just go around, and I think there's so many I think for so long, and I don't know if this is just an American thing or whatever, but even people who are Christians and are at church every Sunday and they love Jesus, but they don't know the Bible. And so they kind of have these 10 to 15 phrases that they cling to, that they throw out there, that they really build their lives upon. And I think if you went to them and said, that's not in the Bible. It's not that what you're saying is not a biblical thought or a biblical concept, but the quote that you're saying is not actually in the Bible. I think it would rock them to their core to know that. And I think, and we've talked about this so many times before, the level of biblical illiteracy in this country is astounding. It is just absolutely astounding, considering that even atheists probably have 5 or 6 Bibles in their houses.
Yeah. Well, I agree. I had a conversation with somebody just the other day, and we were talking about some very basic things, and I was like, it's kind of like the story of Abraham out of the Bible, and I was relating it to something we've been going through, Genesis on Sunday nights. And, even just the most basic of stories from... that you'd feel like even in Sunday school you'd catch on just were not understood, or even that there was no knowledge of it whatsoever. It's crazy.
I want to correct myself here. It wasn't the rabbi. It was Steve Booman Prediger. He's a professor at Hope College in Holland, Michigan, and he says, quote, "In my college religion classes, I sometimes quote Second Hesitations 4:3. There are no internal combustion engines in heaven." And there are people who don't catch it. Think of that, the combustion engine,
That's funny.
I think I'll try that Sunday and just see.
Also,
it better be in the King James when you give it.
That's funny.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, the King James.
Then he saith unto them, Yea, verily there shall be no internal combustion engines in that celestial city. And a great host of the elders rose up.
That's so funny, man.
Hey, Heath, any thoughts on Tressel?
James.
Let's be very honest about what happened with Tressel. When Tressel first gets the email from the booster saying, "Hey, do you know this is going on?" If Tressel reports that, and therefore by reporting that does not have to lie to the NCAA subsequently, he's still got a job. I remember this is several months ago, maybe 2-3 months ago, when it came out that he had misled the NCAA. I think it was Ivan Mazel on SportsIllustrated.com who basically said he's not going to be here next season. When you lie to the NCAA, that is the number one no-no. Same thing that happened to Bruce Pearl. Bruce Pearl, if he had not lied to the NCAA, probably would have got fired because he wasn't doing a very good job. That's not the case with Tressel, man. Of course, when your star quarterback's making $40,000 a year signing memorabilia, it's easy to build a pretty good roster doing that. And, it came out that Terrell Pryor was driving all these different cars and actually showed up to the meeting about Tressel's resignation in a car that it was shown that his mother had paid for, but it was a new car. It still had the 30-day tag on it. And everybody was like, well, that's his car. His mom paid for it. Nobody mentioned that his license is suspended. He's not even supposed to be driving. So until the NCAA shuts down a football program like USC or Ohio State, until they make an example of one of the big boys, or says, you know what, Ohio State, you used ineligible players in this past BCS game, you're going to have to give that money back. USC, you had to vacate your 2004 national title. You got to give that money back from that bowl game. Until they raise the stakes and start doing stuff like that and really holding people accountable. Because listen, you go to Clemson University today, or whenever school's in session, you go to the football players' parking lot. You're going to see some cars that raise some eyebrows.
Okay, but let me ask this question.
Yes,
let me ask this question. Yeah. Why do we accept that college athletes shouldn't have access to perks like this. I mean, they're gaining real value, even financial value, for that university by their performance on the field. And why have we just accepted the line that they have to be totally unremunerated? I agree they shouldn't be getting contracts, but if you've got a guy on your team, what incentive to play harder than to say, okay, you know, Joe Smith over here, he really played his heart out last week, and he's got several calls now from dealers that want an appearance, and he's going to be pulling down this kind of money for every appearance.
Yeah,
I don't have any problem with that at all.
Well,
I don't see how that's corrosive or corrupting of the game.
Well, here's the thing. No, I absolutely believe if you put me in charge of the NCAA today, I would have made it so if Terrell Pryor wants to sign a jersey and somebody wants to sell that, absolutely pocket the money. I mean, the NCAA is selling Terrell Pryor jerseys everywhere. Ohio State University selling his jersey everywhere, making millions of dollars off this. So I'm just saying he broke the rules. I'm saying change the rules. I'm not saying
okay. I'm with you.
I mean, you buy a. If you go this fall and you buy the NCAA football game, and you go in to, let's just say Clemson, for example, and
talking about video game?
I'm talking about the video game, EA Sports, NCAA college football. You can go into the Clemson roster. You can go to edit the running back that's Andre Ellington. It has his same vital statistics, his same height, his same weight, but it doesn't have his name. It just says player number so-and-so. And the NCAA, EA Sports, Clemson University making millions of dollars off this kid. And it's very evident. It's his likeness. Once you turn pro, the NFL owns you. Just don't get me started on this. It's ridiculous.
I can't believe that we agree on this. I totally agree. I thought what Spurrier said last week was courageous, and Spurrier's saying pay the players.
Listen. Do not use the word courageous and Steve Spurrier in the same sentence. Steve Spurrier, who says, if Steven Garcia messes up again, he's going to be all. I mean, again, what talk about the king of. I mean, Steven Garcia cannot go a week without getting in trouble.
Wait a minute. You're just miffed because Steve Spurrier said he was sad they weren't going to Death Valley to play this fall because it's really become a home away from home.
Hey, he's right. I went to the game at Death Valley. And it was a South Carolina home game. I'm just going to tell you. If I had taken if my son, I'm being dead serious. If my son were 6 or 7 years old and I had taken him to that game this year and it was his first game at Clemson, he would pull for Carolina his whole life. And so I thank God every day that he was not old enough and we didn't go. He didn't go.
There are other things to thank God for. Okay.
That's right. I got my priorities straight.
Real quick here, the Liberty University story is interesting in that we all agree that a Christian university, ought to be able to block certain content from their network. And the problem is this: that they only block the News in Advance for one day. This is the biggest newspaper or news outlet in Lynchburg. And the one day they blocked it was the day that they did a story about Liberty University gets more federal dollars than any school in the state of Virginia. It is number
Why would they
one.
Block it? That just makes no sense. I'm being facetious here.
It's just interesting. It was in bad taste for Liberty University to do that. And they're not saying why they blocked it, but it's pretty hard to believe that it was for any other reason. And it was only blocked that day.
This is what's wrong. Let me go on my minor rant, and this has to do with libertarianism. This is what's wrong with so much of conservative religious Christianity today in America, is that it is so politicized and all about winning for our team, not winning for Christ. We joked about a certain songwriter who you'd say, well, would you like to give a testimony? And he would pump his songs instead in the pre-show. But really, that's what it's become. We have become the scribes and the Pharisees and the keepers of the temple. We become the money changers in our day.
Yeah.
And by the things that we do and say, we keep people from the kingdom of God. We confuse them and make it more complex and more complicated than it needs to be. And if Jesus were to come back and look at the mess we've made of things today, I'm talking about the church now. I'm talking about good, well-intentioned people who have that Bible that they know parts of, like the rabbi said. I don't know if he'd say anything at all. Maybe his statement to us would be, "Oh, grow up." You know, but we have majored in things that are so petty, and so instead of saying, "Look, we really believe in individual freedom, and we don't agree with what this newspaper says, but we're going to be an example that Christianity does uphold and lead and espouse the ideals that lead to the greatest amount of liberty," which our founding fathers believed, by the way.
Yeah, they were in bad form.
They demonstrate this narrow provincialism that just puts a smear on everything.
Hey, Tony, Marcy's asking in the chat room where you got your information about all the money that Liberty University receives.
We've linked. We'll have it in the show notes. We link you right to the news in advance. It talks about how much that university gets. So in the state of Virginia, that university gets more money, more federal dollars than any other university. So you have Virginia Tech, University of Virginia. I mean, you have some big schools in that state. But Liberty University.
I'm looking right now. Do we have the link though that talks about the story about the money? I think is where the question's coming from. We've got the news in advance story about the paper blocked, but do we have anything where it actually goes to more federal dollars than
any other school?
I thought that was in the story. I'm looking real quick here. I actually read the actual dollar amount. It might be, if you go into the story itself, there is a paragraph there that says citing an article, and that is linked, and I imagine that's the one.
All right, I'm looking here for citing an article.
But go through the article that we link you to, and there are different places highlighted. Somewhere in there is the story, or is the amounts and where they get that from. It's some government report.
Yeah, I'm not seeing it though.
All right. Yeah.
Anyways.
Yeah. We'll try to track that down. Real quick, the last thing that Steve read I think is important, and that is for those that are on an Apple platform, there was a malware that went out called Mac Defender, and I think that it finally passed the litmus test of true malware and showing that there's commitment by people now to get into Mac to Apple machines, and that is the Apple did a patch for this, and so you could update your computer within 8 hours. There was already a workaround, so where the patch didn't work.
That patch. Now I'm going to sound like a total defender. I absolutely believe we are at a point where you really got to be careful as an Apple person, but and a user. Malware is out there, and we've got to be realistic about that. But after that malware was updated, it just started the arms race. Apple has updated that patch, and that patch is something that after you've installed it, does that in the background. It keeps that database up to date on what is malicious in the background. So I don't know where the status is right now on it. I'm sure that the Mac Defender people have rewritten it again, to get around that update.
Right.
But it'll just be a back and forth now between the two groups.
No, exactly, TG. And so what I'm saying is what the Windows world has had to work with, now Mac people. And in this article that we link you to, it's fascinating because this just is a matter of math. And so the Mac has been secure because of obscurity. And it's not the case anymore. 80% of all PCs are well protected. Now you have some reports that are saying that saturation of Apple products is up to 17% in some markets. And the point is this, that in raw users, you have as many Mac users as that 20% that's unprotected in the PC world. So now it's just becoming financially feasible for hackers, those that produce malware, to go after Macs. And so, I mean, it has officially started. So, it's the same old thing. Do your updates, watch what you click on and watch what you accept.
Hey, could I ask you a question that's totally unrelated to anything we've been talking about so far?
All right.
Where are you seated right now? Is that your bedroom there?
It's at my brother's house.
Right. Okay. Because what I'm going to tell you is I appreciate his benevolence to you, but you're going to have to ask them to move out of the master bedroom because that just doesn't have the kind of character or presentation that we're looking for on the show here. Okay.
Well, thanks there, Steve.
I'll try to do better, Steve. You know what I'll do is I'll get a drop back or a backdrop of the Chicago skyline.
I see someone waving over your shoulder there. Is that
I'll have a fan on me, the Chicago skyline, and I'll say that I'm joining you from the shores of Lake Michigan.
No, you need to have our Technology Show banner behind you.
You should take that with you.
Be some degree of opulence, maybe a bear rug cast out on the floor and a fireplace off burning bright.
I will really try, Steve. Okay.
Word in edgewise. I've tracked down the link to the federal dollars story from the News in Advance website that Liberty University blocked. So I have it. I'm adding it to both the chat room right now and to our show notes.
You the man. All right. Final story here real quick. We have a teen that was dressed up as a giant ice cream cone, and she got attacked. The name of the mascot is Slabby for the marble slab. She was out front, 16-year-old, out front just trying to generate business, and it seems that another teen got out of their car and pushed the giant ice cream cone over.
Whoever added the little commentary to our show notes gets a pat on the back this morning. Who did that?
That was Steve-O.
Steve. All right, Steve. Why don't you go ahead and just say it?
I don't know what you're talking about.
Come on, Steve. Say it.
I said
beautiful.
The title of the article should not have been "Teen Dressed as Giant Ice Cream Cone Gets Attacked," which is what the paper went with. I like "Teen Dressed as Giant Ice Cream Cone Gets Licked."
It's beautiful, Steve. It's beautiful.
All right. Let's talk about what's coming up in the future. Next week, we have Lisa Anderson Umana. She is with Christian Camping International. She'll be joining us from Tegucigalpa, Honduras via Skype. Wow. On June the 22nd, we're going to have Tom Clegg. He is the author of 2 books, Lost in America, How You and Your Church Can Impact the World Next Door, and then also Missing in America, Making an Eternal Difference in the World Next Door. On June the 29th, Chris Conrad will be with us. He is the district superintendent on the West Michigan District. We'll be talking about church multiplication, church planting, and revitalizing churches. On August the 3rd, Dr. Bob Weitzel will be with us, and he'll be discussing his book, Waypoints. And we have been talking a little bit about intergenerational ministries, and I know, Heath, you've been working a little bit on a guest for that particular topic.
Yes, working with Matthew DePrez from Frontline Community Church in Michigan, and hoping to have him on in the next, I guess it'll be sometime in July, to have him on to talk about how their church has just gone all intergenerational and what brought him to that decision. And a really cool guy doing a lot in our denomination, was part of the panel down at the emergency conference at the gathering. So looking forward to spending some time with him.
All right, and we mentioned last week that we are on the verge of kind of a little partnership with Wesleyan Publishing House. As a matter of fact, they have sent me a list of authors that I can contact, and what we're going to do is get the authors on the show, and we'll be promoting their books, and we'll be interviewing them about their books, and in return, Wesleyan Publishing House is going to, when we have these authors on, they'll be giving away a copy of the book, and that will come right from Wesleyan Publishing House. So we're working on that and very much excited about it. All right, Heath, where can our listeners find you on the internet?
They can find me at 2 different places, chaseyourline.com and heathmullican.com. Later on today, I'll be posting episode 2 of the Chase Your Line podcast and the Rural Pastor podcast. So that's where they find me from there. They can find me on Twitter and all these different places and just connect and cool stuff.
All right, Steve.
They can find me at facebook.com/steve.stanley.
All right, Brother TG.
You can find me at Matthew.t. Oh, I just messed up my own URL. At MatthewTG.com, where if you can spell it, you are worthy.
All right, you can find me at facebook.com/AKC64. If you want to do further research on anything we discussed today, you can find all the links to the stories we covered at our website, thetechnologyshow.com. If you want to contact us, send your emails to thetechnologyshow@gmail.com or leave us a voicemail by calling 3049-TEOLOGY. That's 304-986-5649. Leave a message, and we may even play your comments on the air. We want to thank everyone for joining us. Goodbye.
Adios.
I get the last word? Yes.
Adios.
Ah!
Sayonara.
The show that will not end.